Okay, my YouTube people. Today I'm going to be working on a 2006 KLX 250S. This also has a big bore kit on it, so now it's 350 cc's instead of 250. Work I need to do is the starter gasket is leaking oil, the rear swing arm bearings, the bottom shock bearing, going to change all the link bearings. But what started this off, the rear wheel bearings are bad, and while I'm at it, decided to do front wheel bearing. So here we go. In the description, I'll list all the parts that I use to repair this bike. I'm going to start by taking this nut off and pulling the rear wheel. First thing I'm going to do is remove the cotter pin. Next, we're going to take the 27mm axle nut off. Alright, hold that. As you can see, the person who owned this before did put some grease on it. So that's a good thing. You always want to grease those. I'll be cleaning the axle, and of course you always want to put your nut back on there so you don't damage the threads. And now loosen the chain. Okay, and now just pull the rear wheel out and sneak it around the caliper. Alright, now next thing I'm going to do is pull the rear swing arm off. And to do that, you have to disconnect the link, you have to disconnect the shock, and then you can pull the swing arm bolt out. But even before you do that, you need to take the brake caliper off and take these plastic pieces off so the hose can come off. As you've seen in the past, I like to use my impact driver. For whatever reason, this bit for the Phillips fits really well. And thankfully, I didn't have to bang on it for these. They're pretty loose. Next, we're going to take the mudguard bolts out. Next, we're going to take out the shock bolt, and then first we're going to take the link off and then take the shock bolt out. At this point, we pulled the link off and it come through here. We pulled the shock bolt out. Now, to get this triangular link out, you have to remove this nut and it slides out the other side. And then to get the swing arm off, you have to remove this nut and bolt, and then the swing arm should come right out. Okay. They come off with no problem. Now we'll just knock them out of there. Got it all apart now. The bearings in the swing arm are completely seized. This bearing here still moves. This one here is completely seized, and the lower shock bearing is completely seized. Next issue with this bike is it's leaking oil out of this starter gear cover. Going to take that off and replace the gasket. Got that cover off. There's a gear in here. Gasket doesn't look terrible, but it didn't look perfect either. The new gasket's part number 11060-1641. So we're going to clean all this up and then put the new gasket on. Took a razor blade to this and cleaned it off, and then took some Scotch-Brite and I also did the same thing with the cover. Brake cleaned it, and now it's all clean. So I got the new gasket on. Now I'm going to put the cover back on here. I'm going to put the bolts back in and put a little blue Loctite on them. First, I'm going to torque them to 55 inch-pounds. I always like to go around twice. Now I'm going to torque them to 95 inch-pounds. Okay, and that should take care of that. Now we're going to replace the rear wheel bearings. You got to pop the seal. I just take a big screwdriver down in there, give it a twist, and the seal pops right out. I'll do the same thing on the sprocket side. I already checked these wheel bearings and they're bad. You can clearly feel it. You have to check on these to make sure there's no snap ring holding them in before you start to bang them out. There's not one on that side, but there is one on this side. So you have to make sure that you take that snap ring out before you go any further.
She don't want to come out.
Alright, good job. Now we're going to bang the bearing out. This is the side that the snap ring came out of. So the way I do this is I come in on this side with some kind of punch, and I just kind of lift up to get that spacer down a little. Now I push down and give it a couple whacks, and you just heard the bearing pop right out. Now I got the bearing out. So now what you do is you take the spacer out. Now you go in the open end, and it's real easy to knock the bearing out of the other side. And there it is. And that's how you get those out real nice and easy. Next, you want to get a rag and some brake clean and clean out this area real good. Make sure any dirt that's in it, you get it out. The wheel bearing kit for this bike, all balls AB 251223. And you can see here I have it nice and clean. And the first thing I'm going to do is put the wheel bearing in on the side without the snap ring. So it'll be this one, and it'll go in here like that. Now what you can do to help yourself, and I will, is I'm going to put a little bit of heat on this, just warm it up so that the bearing slips in easier. I'm just using a regular old propane torch. I'm going to heat it up a little bit. The other thing you could do is put this bearing into the freezer, and that'll help this process. This won't need a lot of heat, and a lot of times I don't even use it. The other thing I do is use the old bearing, if it's usable, and that way you can tap on it. Then I get a punch to take it home. And you can hear right there change sounds, and that's how you know you have it all the way down. Take a look up in with a flashlight and pretty much tell it's all the way down. Next thing you have to do is clean off the spacer. You can see that has plenty of dirt on it. Now that you have the spacer nice and clean, I'm going to heat it a little over here. Okay, now that I have it heated up, I'll drop the spacer in and put the bearing in. And you can see this one, it pressed down in pretty far right on its own because it's heated up enough. Now I'll get a bearing and take it down below the surface. And now I'll take the punch to drive it the rest of the way. I didn't say this last time, but when you're using a punch, you want to make sure you stay on the outer race. You can always feel in here and feel how much plays in the spacer to know whether you're all the way down or not. Okay, now it's all the way down. And now you just put the snap ring back in. Make sure you have it down in the groove, and it is. Before you put the seals in, you want to make sure this is cooled down enough. I can touch this with my fingers, no problem. So it's plenty cool. And these usually just press in with your fingers. There you go, that's that one. When I go to put the rear axle in, I'll put grease on the inner lip of the seal at that time. Now again, you just take the seal, you put it in with your fingers. So the next thing I'm going to do is do the bearings in the swing arm. With these, I just take something in them, and then this half pops out, and then I just tap that bearing out like that a little bit. It started to come. Now I get a socket that size and drive it out. The other thing you could do is put the extension in. You can't see it, but there's rust falling out of it. And like I said, these were seized. So you can see right there, there's rust all over this. And then there's needle bearings down in here, and they're not moving at all. Now for this, I do better with a press. And the way I press these out is I get a socket that's this size and then use a vise to do it with. I'll show you the other side. I already have the spacer off of it. I'll just start it like that. This one, the bearings are gone, and you just saw them fall out there. So this one's in real bad shape. So it's good we went in on these to replace them. Sometimes these outer races can be really tricky to get off when they're this bad. So on the link, I started taking out the center pieces. You can see this one, this bearing isn't real bad. This is the one that wasn't seized, and the bearings still have grease on them. Also have water in there. But this one you can see is completely dry and rusted, and it's ruined. And then this one's going to be the same way. So to get the lip seals out of these, I just get a screwdriver and they pluck pretty much out. Same will be over here. And you can see where these needle bearings here are completely dried and rusty. again. Yeah, you can see that one's starting to pop out, but it's really bad shape also. Now look out.
Nice.
Yeah. See, I'm gonna have to put these in one way because that thing ain't round no more. Okay, 2 of them are out. Got all but that one nasty swing arm one, and then this one. So I got all the bearings out of this, and I just old schooled it with sockets. The way I do that is I get a socket that fits in here, and then I get a bigger socket on the other side and kind of do it like a ball joint or like you're pressing them. And I got all of them out of here. The only one that's going to be really difficult is getting this outer race, because all the bearings fell out and it fell apart. It's going to be getting this outer race out of the swing arm. Sometimes you have to end up cutting them out.